Hey, folks, how we doing? This is Bob Gomes, bringing you the Concern Forum, and I hope that everyone has had a good evening. And I just felt like talking, to be quite frank about it. Uh, what we do here at the Concern Forum is that how should I say, we do commentary on what's happening, in particular in the United States, and also on the African continent, because I believe they both are just very, very interconnected. Uh, some of you who have known me from the past, uh, you might find this repetitious, but for new uh, lookers, let me just say really quick, I'm a Navy veteran. I'm disabled, and I started this thing um, basically because of the fact that one night off the coast of Libya, I thought that my shipmates and myself were going to die. And I felt that it would be a shame for all these young American boys to basically die and not having any idea of what they were dying for, the reasons, etc. I swore to myself that if I got out of that scrape in one piece, that someday I would have a radio station, a TV show, something, right, that would help to inform people. Hence, that's what created the Concern Forum. All right, so you know that. Um, where do we stand now? Well, it would seem that America, our great America, is going down the tubes. Okay, I don't think there's any denying when you have millions of Americans having to live in their cars, living in their shelters, I don't believe that that's what the American dream was supposed to be all about. The thing is now, how did we get there? How are we going to extricate ourselves from the situation? Um, let me let me put in my plug quickly. Uh, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Now, who said that? Bob Gums? Nah, not me. Fellow by the name of Thomas Jefferson. Let me turn this down a little bit because I have Billy Joel playing in the background. Um, I find Billy Joel to be very soothing. Mm. And as I see what's happening to my American Democratic Republic, yeah, I I need soothing. Okay. Um, listen, I think that what Jefferson said really hit the nail on the head. Now, listen, how should I put this? Thomas Jefferson was a slaveholder who had a romance. I think at the time when it started, she was like, what, 15, 14, 15? Uh, I can understand how it started because, what was there? Sally Hemings was the half sister of the woman that Jefferson had married. And unfortunately for Tom, she died. And then I guess one day he woke up and looked around and said, damn, this, young black girl, that's my slave and my servant to my daughters. He had some daughters. and he realized that he was looking at the spitting image of his wife, which, I mean, it does make sense because of the fact that his wife and Sally Hemings shared the same dad. So you had the same family resemblance. Now, I don't know. It gets into this whole thing about appropriateness because Jefferson was a grown man and Sally Hemings was basically, a very young teenage girl. But that's what happened. And, they did the whole thing with the DNA and all that stuff. And, historians finally had to admit that, yeah, you know, TJ was dipping his wick on the other side of the fence. That's what happened. Okay, that's called history. It's not my opinion. That's real. Okay. But, it's funny how human beings, we can do things. It's funny. Let me put it to you like this. It's funny how a person can do some things that, you might find so despicable, but still be considered a great man. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I think that Jefferson's ideas, because I did a lot of reading on Jefferson when I was in school. His ideas on government, pretty damn good. I'm not going to take that from him, right? I despise Donald Trump, but if he said, "Hey, man, it's raining outside. You need an umbrella," that sounds like a good idea. And that's how I feel about Thomas Jefferson. And I think that a lot of the ideas that he had about government were good. And especially this one about what I just read about the nation expects to be free and ignorant. That's what's happening to the United States. We have these groups crop up, these various groups crop up, like MAGA, for example. And it's weird because by and large, how should I say, the mass majority of people who call themselves MAGA, they ain't too bright. Okay. And they're easily swayed because MAGA appeals to the bigotry and racism that those people have. And because of that, oh, excuse me, because of that, you have the Orange God sitting in the White House. Now, the problem with MAGA is the fact that they're like puppets. Okay, you look at everything that Donald Trump is doing, and see, that's something else. I'm tired of people talking this economic bullshit, right? If you don't see that Donald Trump is basically trying to destroy this country, you're a damn fool. Okay? And if you are a working class white person, the idea that you support Donald Trump, I'm sorry, I doubt your intelligence. And I'll tell you why. I don't believe in calling people out with not giving a reason. Now, this is a guy condemns science, right? The whole MAGA thing is about condemning science. Uh, we've had science in America. Oh, I don't know about the last 250 years, right? George Washington had his troops vaccinated at Valley Forge against smallpox, all right? Was George Washington a loony leftist? I don't think so. But he had enough respect for scientific discovery, uh, what science could do to help people in general, that when they were at Valley Forge, he said, "Yeah, I want those people vaccinated," which, by the way, is something that the early colonials got from Africans. Okay, because the guy that started the vaccination here in the United States, or at that time the American colonies, he got into it because African slaves told him, yeah, man, this is what we used to do with the cattle back in, was it Kenya? Or not Kenya, but, in Africa. And lo and behold, he tried it out. He said, hey, this whole idea of vaccination has promise. Now, here we are in the 21st century, and we have these MAGA people basically saying that, yeah, we should go back to the dark ages. Someone gets a disease, we should pray over. I'm not knocking prayer, but I do believe that God Almighty wanted us to use our brains. That's why He gave it to us. That's why He gave them to us. Mm. And the idea that in your phony claim that you want to cut government spending or you cut out cancer research, I mean, come on. You're going to cut cancer research, right? The plague of the 21st century, especially in, modern industrial societies, right? And you're going to end that. You're going to end the research on that. And you're going to tell me that, number one, America first. You care so much about Americans. Why would you cut out cancer research? It's so obvious, and that millions of people in this country of all ethnic backgrounds depend upon food stamps, right? And you're going to rip that away from them. And millions of people, especially in red states, depend upon FEMA. They depend upon national weather checkers, put it that way, make it simple, right? To warn you when, hey, there's a tornado coming, okay, or a hurricane or what have you, and you're going to cut them, and then you're going to tell me that you're all for the American people. Then you're going to throw millions upon millions of Americans off of health insurance. MAGA, what are you going to do, MAGA, about your memas and grandpas and what have you? As they're already throwing them out in the streets from the nursing homes. I, I would like to ask MAGA people, are you happy with Mima having to occupy your couch in the living room? Because she don't have the money to go into the nursing home anymore. How was that putting America first? I don't understand that. And right now you have this government shutdown. And the only people that are going to be hurt by that really are people in red states, the people that voted for you, Republicans, and Donald Trump. And I don't understand how MAGA's, see this whole thing about MAGA, um, it it really freaks me out. It truly does because they talk all this stuff about we're going to put America first and blah blah blah. But yet you have so many of these MAGA folks in elected office that take these huge contributions from the Israeli government. Oh, and then you want to turn around and say that anyone that criticizes the genocide in Gaza is somehow anti-Semitic. Well, my personal opinion, anti-Semites they deserve to be hung up by their thumbs and whipped across their backsides a lot. Okay. But when I criticize Israel, I'm criticizing the government. I'm not criticizing a religion. And see, anybody with any common sense knows that. But I give an example. The governor of Arkansas, right? That lady, Arkansas is dying. They depend a lot upon agriculture. And as we all know, since Donald screwed up with the tariffs and decided to go to war, a tariff war against everybody, you have a lot of farmers who are basically getting ready to lose their farms. And I'm trying to understand, how is it that you take away the farmer's source of income, which is the people they had working for them, and then you make these crazy tariff wars, and now people are basically going to Argentina, they're dealing with China, blah blah blah, and these farmers that supported you, uh, they're ready to see their farms go on the auction block. And if they're lucky, they will be hired by some big corporation that has taken their land. Now, I'm trying to, like I said, I ain't the brightest bulb on the chandelier, but I want somebody to explain to me, how in the hell does that put the Americans first? I don't get that, you know? No one from this present administration has bothered to explain that. And I really wonder. Look, I wrote a lot of notes here, but you know what? The main thing is, in my opinion, okay, America has a problem. She had a problem for a long time. And this guy Trump, all he has done has, brought it to the surface. I was listening to what's his name, Tony Scaramucci, right? I like him. I like him. I think he's a good guy. But I think that some of his conclusions to what our problems are, what caused our problems. I mean, he comes right up to it, and then he kind of, because nobody likes to talk about race, especially decent people. Okay, but that's the problem that we have in this country, honestly. And let's face it, what Donald Trump did, he appealed to the beast. And a lot of Americans, unfortunately, and that's why we are in the situation that we are in now. See, because Donald Trump basically told MAGA, listen, don't think, don't look at facts, just listen to me. And them brown people from across the border, they're bad, right? And black folks are bad too, but they've been here longer, and they're citizens. But we'll figure out a way to get rid of them too. And unfortunately, a lot of people jumped at it. I'm so sick and tired of hearing this. Oh, well, the economy. No, the economy ain't shit to do with it. Oh, pardon my French. Economy has nothing to do with it. And I know what a lot of the experts say. Listen, Obama left Trump with a good economy. Now, I'm not trying to put Obama on the pedestal, because there are things about Obama I totally disagree with. But facts are facts. He left Trump, he gave Trump, in the turnover, he gave Trump a damn good economy, right? Much stronger than when Obama first came into office. Now, we can talk about how a lot of average American homeowners were pushed to the side, and things of that nature, which I agree. I don't. My personal opinion, I think that what he should have done, he should have nationalized our banking system. Okay. I guess you can put me in the category of one of the radical right, well, excuse me, radical left wing nuts. But to me, I don't believe that our economic, our whole Wall Street type deal, I don't think that it has been responsible in terms of who we are as a country. See, I think a lot of times people forget, especially politicians, it's not the people that can write the $1 million checks that they're supposed to answer to. It's also, Joe the small businessman, right? Mary the teacher, Julie the nurse, Joe the cop, that they're also supposed to answer to. And unfortunately, far too often over the last 20 years, our elected officials have seemed to have forgotten that. See, and yeah, to a large, to a large extent, I do have problems with Obama. However, as president, he did bring dignity and respect to the office of president, and that's important, especially if you want to consider yourself to be a world power, right? Um, I'll put it to you like this, kind of like what Harry Truman said. You took the office as president of the United States, and you want to make sure that you do not disgrace the office, and that it's just you went in clean and you left clean, and Obama did that, and I think that especially in this day and age, regardless of whatever issues people may have had with Barack, okay, I think the most important one is that he did not disgrace this country. We can't say that now. That cannot be said now. Okay, America is a joke. It is a dying joke, thanks to the circus that we have in the White House now. And I'd be willing to bet black, white, indigenous, Latino, if we had the chance to snap our fingers and put Obama in the White House, back in the White House, I think the majority of the people, including myself, would say, oh, hell yeah, in comparison to what we have now. So I'm not, believe me, I'm not in this Obama kick. Excuse me, anti-Obama kick. He was not God, right? As far as I'm concerned, he did make some mistakes, some things he should have done differently. But the overall picture that he painted and that he left for the White House was a good one. And I don't care, I really don't give a damn how much Donald Trump tries to take that away from him. History, you know, history will back up what I'm saying. Oh, and by the way, I don't recall anyone in Barack Obama's coterie, cabinet people, advisors, what have you, none of them were subpoenaed or went to jail, right, or convicted of any crimes, right? Donald Trump cannot say that from his first term. So I think that says a whole hell of a lot, quite frankly. Um, I understand also that you have some black, primarily younger black men that want to attack the Democratic Party. Um, what is the name of Stephen Smith, the loudmouth guy from ESPN, and talking about something about blacks on the Democratic plantation. And I find that so strange. You have a president now that is literally trying to overthrow the American government. and all you could find to comment upon is black Democrats. I don't get it. This is a guy, the present occupant of the White House. This is a guy that openly makes love to American Nazis, right? To the racist elements in MAGA, who himself has a history of saying and doing things against people who happen to be, shall we say, non-Caucasian. And you're gonna take time out of your busy day to talk about black folks um, being on a Democratic plantation. Well, guess what? And maybe, ooh, I hate to show my age, but Stephen, maybe, because I believe you came into the world in like what, 68? Well, let me tell you something. Uh, and we need to get this straight. The reason that black folks in general, I mean, I know we have a few of you who I would call uninformed brothers out there, but the reason why black folks kind of cling to the Democratic Party, there's good historical reasons for that. Okay? I don't know if you ever heard of the Southern strategy. You know what that strategy was, Stephen? Um, and what's the other cat's name? The one that thinks that dead Palestinian or dead Gaza babies make a good punchline. Okay. I wrote it down somewhere because I really don't keep up with people's names who I really don't think have anything to offer. Oh, look, Van Jones? Something like that. Yeah. I don't understand what's with you guys. I really don't. And I say this as a child of the civil rights movement, who had two parents who were racial justice activists, and who were also Republican Party activists, which shows you how much times have changed with the Republican Party. And I wonder why, folks like Stephen Smith, Ryan Daniels, what's his name, Tim Scott, uh, and now I would dare say Van Jones. I don't understand what's wrong with you people. Have you not studied the history of your people in America? Have you not studied the political history? Well, let me inform you. From 1932, slowly and gradually, the Democratic Party started to try and shake off the chains of the racist Southern Democrats. Okay? Finally, when we get to like 59, 60, people start to realize, and also something else was happening that time, especially in the late 50s. You had all these nations of color in Africa, Latin America, Asia, right, that were throwing off the chains of colonial oppression. And basically, what happened, um, actually starting from Eisenhower, that good Republican president, they started to realize, hey, listen, we're going to do our thing and do what we do, but we have to take into account that we got a whole bunch of dark folks out there who, by the way, make up the majority of this planet. Yellow, black, brown, red folks that make up the majority of the planet. And it don't look good to have legal segregation in a place that's supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. And they started to realize that. That's why Well, Eisenhower sent the troops into Little Rock, Arkansas, to segregate the schools there. When the people just went wild and started rioting and killing and breaking up stuff, and the whole world saw that, right? One African person who was a student came over here as a student, made the comment that he was so impressed to see Eisenhower do what he did to, ensure that black people who looked like him would have the same rights to attend the public schools. And see, that meant a lot. Now, I spent time in the Navy. Half my naval career was in intelligence. I was a intelligence tech assigned to DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is anyone who knows the intelligence world knows that that's basically the flip side of CIA. And when I first got there, I was privileged to attend, how should I say, a class, basically, taught by old state, retired State Department hand, and I believe the other gentleman was a former CIA. And what they did, they showed us the films of, down south and the segregation struggles and police dogs biting teenagers who wanted to use the library, the public library. And they made the comment that that's what our adversaries at that time, the communist Russian government, the Chinese communist government, that's what they were, and the North Korean communist government, that's what they were, when they went to Latin American and to African countries, these newly independent places, and they were showing, yeah, this is what white America thinks about people of color. And that's why, under Eisenhower and then the Kennedys, racial integration became a national priority. It became a national security issue. Because, you got some dark country in Africa or in Asia, and they have, let me make up something, blue, right? Some kind of high strategic metal, and America has to deal with these folks. And, meanwhile, you got communist Commissar Brzezinski telling, telling some black president or premier or warlord in Africa, yeah, listen, this is what the Americans, this is what they think of you. So that's one of the main reasons why the Democratic Party really took up the mantle of civil rights. And they changed and tried to get away from their racist old Southern Dixie past. Okay? And that's what happened. Now, unfortunately, the Republicans they couldn't win they couldn't win an election if they printed the ballots themselves. So what people like Pat Buchanan, Lee Atwater, and what's the name, Kevin Phillips decided to do, they decided to basically engage in what was called the Southern Strategy. And all that was, you went and you found racist white Democrats in the South that hated the Democratic Party for turning away from legal segregation, and you encouraged these people to come into the Republican Party. And over a period of time, what you wound up doing, you wound up basically pushing out black Republicans. Now, I know this intimately. My parents were black Republicans and very active in the Republican Party. But by the time we get to the 70s, okay, uh, you really decreased the number of black Republicans because many black Republicans came to the realization that, hey, this party hates me. Okay. You have Lee Atwater out there telling The Republicans will listen. You don't call them niggas anymore, but you talk about busing, and things like that. So that way you can avoid saying nigger, but you still can get your message across. So, Mr. Stephen Smith, what's his name? Tim Scott, Brian Daniels, who really, you don't know, Brian Daniels really freaks me out because you don't know what the hell he's talking about. But people like that, right? That's, you want to talk about the Democratic plantation? That's how Black Americans generally wound up on the so called Democratic plantations. Now, if you want to tell me that our political process is really screwed up on both sides of the issue, because now you're talking about, for example, APAC basically, giving huge grants to elected officials on both the Republican side and the Democratic side to support the Israeli government, right? And they're carrying out genocide in Gaza. Well, yeah, if you want to talk about how we need to upgrade our electoral system, yeah, I'm down with that. Okay, but don't sit up there and point your finger and say, "Oh, well, the Democrats got all these blacks on the plantation." No, because it ain't about that. It ain't that simple, right? I'm a simple man, but I'm not simple-minded. And unlike, Mr. Smith, I dare say Mr. Scott, definitely Brian Daniels, I was there, okay? I grew up in a Republican political family. My old man was the vice president for the Republican Party in Harlem, okay? So I get so tired of hearing people, especially people who really don't know, and they spew out this garbage. And people like in MAGA, because they're all, oh, look, we got a black guy. Like, what's their name? Candace Owens? That poor, sorry young lady, okay? Oh, we have a black person that's concerned. No, what you have a freaking tool, okay? And I tell you quite frankly, she would not have been welcome among black Republicans back in the 60s and 70s. See, but that's what happens when you jump into something and you don't have the full knowledge of what it is that you're jumping into. Now, right now, we have a president that definitely has psychological disabilities. Also, he's so full of hate because of the fact that this is a rejected guy when you talk about Donald Trump. Okay. That's why his political career took off where? In the so-called heartland and in the South. Why? Because they don't know this guy. All they could hear was, hey, he don't like Mexicans. I don't like Mexicans. I don't like seeing these brown people walk around. And that leads me to something else. This schism between black and Latino, I think is probably one of the most stupidest ass things in the world. Oh, listen, I think that both sides, on the black American side and on the Latino side, are responsible for that. And a word to a lot of black voters, black people, especially black men, that talk about, oh, these immigrants are coming here, blah, blah, blah. Listen, Brian Daniels, that Republican congressman in Florida, he's of immigrant stock. Okay, he's not native born black American. Okay, I am native born black American. However, my pop, my dad, comes from the American Virgin Islands, and his dad came from the Dominican Republic, and his mom came from Haiti. Okay, I'm born and raised in New York City. My mother was a Virginia. Okay, her forebears not only did they pick tobacco, they built Jefferson's house at Monticello. Now, from what she told me as a child growing up, family lore says that her side of the family has been in Virginia since the 1680s. So, if you want to play this game about who belongs here, who is here, blah blah blah, who did this, who did that, hey, I'm more of an American than Donald Trump. I'm definitely more of an American than his wife is. Okay? So when you start playing these games, you have to be careful with that. You have to remember something. America, we are unique. And that's one of the only things I agree with people like Charlie Kirk and MAGA and the rest of the right wing nutballs. Okay? We are unique. And we're unique because we had colonists that came from Europe. And I know some people are going to get touchy about this, but we killed, raped, robbed our way across the whole continent of indigenous people. And that's how we're here. Now, that's just a fact. And if you ever read a history book, you'll see that for yourself. And most of my information I got when I was stationed in D.C. at the White House and hanging out in the Library of Congress. But hey, folks, that's just the way it was. And then while America was doing that, while the colonial people were doing that, they decided to bring black Africans from Africa to the West Indies, right, which is also a part of America, whether you like it or not, and to the North American continent, okay, who basically gave this nation the economic foundation which allowed it to become a world power. Okay? These are facts, right? Mississippi used to be now Mississippi right now is like a dumpster fire. Okay? You look at all the stats, health, education, etc., right? Infrastructure. They're in the toilet. But Mississippi used to be the wealthiest state in the United States because of slavery. Okay? So I really get when I have somebody like a Holman or Cipriano or Scantelli or Pulaski, right? They're talking about, oh, well, we came over here. My forebears came over here legally. Bullshit. No, you came over here because of conquest. And because the people who were here before you had me build this economic colossus, or what used to be an economic colossus, for you, right? So when immigrants from Eastern Europe and Ireland and Italy came over here, they came to a going concern. And that was because of the fact that you had me working, picking the tobacco, picking the cotton and the rice, the indigo, right? Doing the labor. Okay? Who do you think? I just told you, my forebears on my mother's side, they built Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, right? So, we got things, and because of the fact that you have these MAGA people on these school boards trying to suffocate American history, people don't know that. But yeah, there would not be an America, put it this way, there would not be an America that helped to win World War One and World War Two if it wasn't for me. I mean, not me personally. I mean, I did 26 years in the military, but I'm just saying, me, stereotypical me, black guy. Yeah, that's how you got that. And then you look at all the inventions that black people, men and women, made to contribute to the society. I tell you quite frankly, if it wasn't for Black Americans, there would be no America. You genocided I hate to use that term, the Native Americans, the indigenous people were genocided, right? And you had uh, Africans, kidnapped Africans, build what this country became. Now, I know all about the pioneers and the immigrants working in the Pennsylvania coal mines and all that good stuff, right? But it was through the labor of these misplaced, or should I say, kidnapped Africans that made all that possible, right? The Industrial Revolution. Hey, man, listen, industry takes money, okay? You still have, what is it, J.P. Morgan and a couple of these banks, they're still out here. Was it Chase? And a couple of others, right? They got their start doing slavery. Same thing with some of these insurance companies, insuring black bodies. Right now, uh, I know that some folks, oh, well, you just want to make white people feel bad. No, because you had some courageous, humane, great white men and women that gave their lives, right, their fortune to end the inhumanity of American chattel slavery. Uh, my favorite civil rights hero is, believe it or not, Malcolm X. I respect the brother. Martin Luther King. I respect and I love the brother. But the greatest, to me, in my pantheon of heroes, greatest hero is John Brown because he put his butt where his mouth was. You know, he talk about money. Put your money where your mouth. Put your money where your mouth is. John Brown did that. His whole family did that. And and he wasn't the only one. You had many white folks out there back in the day, okay, that gave their all to help end this American chattel slavery. And you had many white folks that fought against Jim Crow after the Republicans sold out black people in 1877 and allowed the Democratic Confederates, ex-Confederates, to basically put black folks or try to keep us in cages, right? So it's not a thing about trying to, oh, I want to make all white people feel guilty. No, man, that's bullshit, okay? And the people that don't want you to know America's full history are basically trying to engage in the cover because you had some great white Americans that fought against injustice. See, and I think that what we have allowed to happen, we have allowed people to form into, believing in stereotypes, and also it's the whole power dynamic thing. I'm Latino, right? I'm here. I see, everybody's telling me, yeah, well, black people are this and that. I'm going to go with the power dynamic, right? I'm going to go with Donald Trump. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of the Latinos did. And what really pisses me off about that is that the leadership in a lot of these Latino communities, they didn't help their people. The woman that was, remember that woman that was Venezuelans for Trump, right? And what's what Trump turned around and do? It's sad, right? He shoots off her whole family just about, and then she comes on TV and she said, "Oh, we were betrayed." No, you weren't betrayed. Okay, you betrayed yourself because you fell into this whole racial thing, and that's what a lot of American working class people do. They fall into that racial bag. And the truth of the matter is that Trump and people like him, people in his coterie, am I pronouncing that correctly? Coterie? And his gang and his crew, They have no more respect for you as a human being than they have for me. And see, that's what I'm trying to get across to my fellow Americans. No matter what ethnic or racial background, I hate saying racial because as any anthropologist will tell you, ain't but one race out here. It's called the human race. So I prefer to say ethnic, okay? But Trump has no respect for you, right? I mean, even if he thinks that you can be a good boy and take pictures with him, right? That oh God, what was he? Was a senator in Florida. Now he's the Secretary of State, and he's a Cubano, right? And look how Trump treats him, right? Like a lapdog, basically. And see, I mean, this dovetails into so much stuff, right? Like you have Latinos out there cheering for MAGA. MAGA don't give a damn about you, okay? And you have few foolish ass black men out there talking about, "Hey, I'm black MAGA." Ain't no such thing, right? You a con, you a fool. They don't give a damn about you. I'm trying to figure out how, especially white working class women, why in the hell do you vote Republican? Okay, this guy, Republicans and Trump and Republicans and MAGA, they say that you don't own your own body, but yet you go out there and you vote for them. And then, you're worried about, well, what am I going to do about mom because she's 80 some odd years old and she's handicapped. And MAGA and the Republican Party support policies that basically gets her kicked out of the nursing home. And right up from the nursing home right to your couch, right to your living room couch. And I don't understand how you could support that. All the time I spent overseas, when I was in Europe, that's one thing Europeans used to ask me about, right? Because I used to hang out in, coffee houses, places like that, college campuses, right? You mean a nicer class of ladies in college campuses when you're overseas. But anyway, he used to ask me about that, right? So why does working class Americans, why do American workers always vote against their own best interest? And I told him, I said, because this whole racial thing, that's what happened to Kamala Harris. I'm tired of this bullshit about, oh, well, she didn't elucidate her programs effective. Bullshit. Bullshit. Here, I got a glass of sewer water. Here, I got a glass of clean water. Now, you might want Kool-Aid or you might want champagne. But right now, I have clean water. So what the hell are you going to drink? You going to drink the sewer water or you going to drink the clean water? And what many white working-class Americans did, and unfortunately, some Latinos and some very ignorant blacks did, they said, I'm going to drink the sewer water. And I can guarantee you, from all my travels, I can tell you the rest of the world, they are marveling at the fact that you decided to vote for a convicted felon, okay? A convicted sexual abuser, who, by the way, is getting ready to give a pardon to the woman that was partners with what's probably the biggest sexual abuser and possibly intelligent spy type person in American history. And that's what you voted for. So don't, oh, them damn Europeans, they think they're so much better than us. Well, hey, man, you kind of gave them a license for that. So, we got, like I say, a lot of work to be done. Oh, and like that little speech that, what's in there, Hegseth, the drunken guy that beats women, from what I understand, from what I've read, and Trump, what the hell are they trying to pull? I really fear that we're going to come to a point in this country where you're going to have to, you're going to have a showdown with the military and with the White House. Because everybody, anybody can see that this White House, they feel that they don't have to abide by the Constitution. And as military people, we take an oath to, defend and support the Constitution. So eventually, those two opposites, they're gonna clash. And I know my admirals, I know my generals, and I would say for the most part, those are men of character, right? And men of honor. Should be men and women of character and honesty. And Trump and his pet ferret, what's his name, Stephen Miller, whose family, by the way, thinks he's scum, which I can understand. Him being the child of immigrants and all. But eventually, this whole thing is going to have to clash. And I pray for our military. I truly do. Um, what Trump and the Republicans are doing, I think it's like, obviously they're trying to destroy our democracy. They destroyed the middle class. You know, there's a whole bunch of different theories as to why. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm just looking at what they're doing, right? You take away health insurance from people, you're going to cause people to die. You take away education, you're going to make people, keep them ignorant. And remember now, Donald Trump says he loves the undereducated. So that should give you a clue right there. You take away healthcare, you take away research. Who in the hell wants to take away research from childhood cancer? Who would do that? I mean, it's just weird, you know? And you don't want people to be alerted when a hurricane or a tornado is coming in their direction? Most of that natural disaster shit happens in red states anyway. Why would you take that away from these people? I mean, damn. Listen, was Kamala Harris perfect? Is she run a perfect campaign? Hell no. But as adults, I think that we learned this whole thing about the lesser of two evils. Yeah, I think that's something that I think is very necessary. You going to take poison? You going to drink the poison, or are you going to eat the food that some of it might give you heartburn, right? And that's what happened. The farmers out there, see, they thought they was going to get over with Trump, right? And what Trump did, he turned the tables on him, and now he wants to give 20 billion bucks to his buddy in Argentina. And what about you? Sometimes you try not to laugh, but sometimes you have to keep from crying. So this is what Trump and MAGA and the Republican Party, this is what they've done to my country. I took an oath to defend, to give my life if necessary. And once or twice it came close to that. But that's okay because that was my country. That was America. But what we got going on now, soldiers walking through the streets, isn't that one of the causes of the American Revolution? Read the Declaration of Independence, right? About quartering, armed troops and amongst civilian populations, right? I mean, that's what the National Guard, unless we were at war or it was a verifiable national emergency, the National Guard is supposed to be the creatures of the governors of that particular state. I mean, you don't have to be a legal scholar to figure this shit out. It's right, it's right there in black and white. And this is what's going down now. I don't. all this business about race and gender, and demagogues have used this to tear our country apart. That's why I look. No, no one has the right to murder anyone. But no, I ain't shedding no damn tears for Charlie Kirk. I'm sorry. I will not do it. I will never do it. Okay? And if you want to know why, read what some of the things that Charlie Kirk had to say about Latinos, about black people, about immigrants in general, about women. No, that ain't the American way. And I know that they're trying, on the so-called right wing, are trying to set up his wife as some kind of future, political bigamy. No, ain't no way in hell. You're gonna follow behind. And I'm also very disappointed. What's his name in New York? Here in New York, Carter Dolan, the Cardinal for New York City, talking about Charlie Kirk was like St. Paul. Somebody, the Holy Father. I have a lot of respect for him. I have a lot of respect for Francis, and I'm a former altar boy. Okay, but a lot of many of these American Catholics, they somehow felt that they could make common cause with the same type of people that hated Catholics. Behind trying to control women's bodies. So that's why I left the American Catholic Church, quite frankly. And I'm, altar boy, Catholic school boy, the whole bit. And I just, this is not the Catholic Church that I was brought up in the 60s and early 70s. No, you can't go and associate with the same people that said, you were, you're demons and stuff like that. And now you're in bed with these people. That's what I tell people. If I had decided to stay overseas and gotten discharged overseas, I would probably still be a practicing Catholic. But, coming back to America and seeing what so-called conservative American Catholics have tried to do to the church, ain't no way. Seriously, ain't no way in hell. Unfortunately, a lot of them have picked up with the whole racial gender dynamic, essentially. And no, I can't have no part of that. My conscience wouldn't allow me. But yeah, I love Pope Francis and I love this guy Leo. Even though I don't agree with them on everything, I know that they're coming from a place of, how should I say, empathy and peace and love for the message of Jesus Christ. Right? And that's all I have to say about that because I don't get into my religion. I'm not a religious person. I consider myself to be more of a spiritual person. But that's the big problem that I have. And what the Cardinal of New York said about Charlie Kirk, I think it was almost blasphemy. Does he not realize that he has black and brown people in his congregation there in the New York City diocese? And for him to say that this clown Charlie Kirk was like St. Paul, I mean, that makes me want to vomit, quite frankly. And I wonder what the Holy Father Pope Leo has to say about this kind of nonsense. Because he appears to be a very godly, decent man. And I don't know. I think the American Catholics are kind of out of this. Conservative American Catholics are out of step with the rest of the industrialized world, as far as I'm concerned. But that's a whole nother bag, a whole nother story. But I do look at trepidation, with trepidation, upon this guy Trump basically trying to unleash military folks into various cities. The military is not a play toy it's not a play toy for him to use, number one. And it's definitely not a political play toy. Oh, I'm going to send the military into these, cities with Democratic mayors. What the hell? What have we come to in America, for God's sake? I mean, yeah, I'm definitely woke, and I think that Americans as a whole need to get woke and realize what's happening. You know, we got people in this country living in their damn cars, for God's sake. And he's running around trying to get Kimmel fired. I mean, what the hell kind of nonsense is this? But listen, I had to spot this spot this out. You see me on YouTube. Hey, give me a check if you like it. Make your comments. If you disagree with me, make your comments still. Okay? This is Bob Gums of the Concerned Forum. Bless you. Take care of yourselves. Love each other. And peace.